Hello everyone, today I have another MATLAB tutorial video for you guys. This one is data analysis with MATLAB for Excel users. So we'll essentially show you how to use MATLAB in conjunction with Excel. And once again, this is courtesy of Dr. Newman Azam. And he has provided us with a limited number of free coupons into the full course. All you need to do is go to the course page, and I will have a link in the description, but all you need to do is enter in the coupon code YouTube free. I will also have a coupon there so you can get into the course for only $10. And if you go to my website, you can also enroll in the complete MATLAB course bundle. So if you've been watching the MATLAB tutorial videos on my YouTube channel and you feel as if you need help, or if you're enrolled in a university class and you find yourself needing assistance with your homework or your project, this is a great value, and Dr. Azam will help you with any questions you may have on Udemy. So if you like the video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe. So let's get started.
Hello students, welcome to the course Data Analysis with MATLAB for Excel Users. So let's see what we have in this course. This course essentially contains 7 sections. In the first section, we will be briefly introducing you to the course, and I will give you my brief introduction. In section 2, we will be looking at some of the basic stuff regarding MATLAB, so how to declare variables and how to store data in MATLAB and how to do necessary operations within the MATLAB. Remember, we will not go into the programming details, rather we will just focus on data analysis. In section 3, we will be looking at data pre-processing and importing data from the Excel sheets into the MATLAB environment. So we will be looking at different ways and how to select data and how to manipulate data and how to create the data and put it into the MATLAB environment. In section 4, we will be looking at various apps, how to analyze the data, how to visualize the data, and the other functionalities that the MATLAB provides you for data analysis. In section 5, we will be looking at how to generate reports for sharing purposes. So the MATLAB will essentially provide you with a very useful tools for this purpose as well. Finally, we will be looking at using MATLAB from within the Excel environment, and we will be looking at a particular tool that is called Spreadsheet Link. So hope you will enjoy the course. Enroll now and get the course.
Hello everyone, my name is Noman Azam. I received my PhD from University of Regina. It is in Canada, and currently I am serving as an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science in the National University of Computer and Emerging Sciences, and it is in Pakistan. So before starting the course, I believe it will be useful to explain briefly my experience with the MATLAB. So I started to use MATLAB in around 2007. The prime reason why I chose MATLAB was that it was very good for research. That is, if you want to code ideas into working products, it is very useful for that. And also it is very fast to code ideas. So during my experience, I touched almost all the aspects of MATLAB by covering its different toolboxes and its different built-in functions. In the MS thesis, I worked on the problem of email classification, and all the code I wrote was in MATLAB. Similarly, in the PhD thesis, I worked on the problems such as text classification, rough sets, game theory, image processing, recommender systems, and others, and all the code I wrote was in MATLAB. So I had over a decade of experience in MATLAB, so that pretty much summarizes my experience and different aspects of that. So in a nutshell, I had a very good experience of MATLAB, and hopefully you will enjoy this course with me.
Okay, so before starting the course, it will be quite useful if we look at the journal steps that are being usually involved in analyzing the data. So the first one is the access of the data itself, and it involves how we incorporate or how we import the data into the analyzing environment. The data may reside in different files, or there may be some software component which we use to access the data. For example, we may have some databases, or we may have some web crawlers which widgets different kinds of websites and gather the data from it. Or alternatively, we may have some hardware component which actually captures the data for us. For example, we may have some sensors which actually sense the real environment and then captures the data from it. So once the data have been accessed and we have access to the data, the next important part is how we analyze the data. Here, we mainly focus on different models. Date will actually explains the trends in our data or the patterns within our data. So we try to basically have some models which explains our data. Here we are working basically on algorithms and visualization aspects of the data. And also we look at different kinds of applications on top of which we can base our analysis. In this course, we will be mainly concentrating on this aspect, that is analyzing the data. And finally, once we have that data, or once we have that analysis aspect done, we would like to share it with our colleagues, our friends, our business partners, and we want to make it available to the public in general so that they have access to our data as well. So in this particular course, our outlines will be based on these three aspects. But for majority part of this course, we will be concentrating on this area, that is the analysis part. We will also be looking at how we can import the data from Excel into MATLAB, and then what are the different tools that are available in the MATLAB in order to analyze that data. And finally, we will be also looking at the MATLAB tools, which will be able to share that data with just a single click of your mouse. So hopefully you will enjoy this course. See you in the next lecture. Okay, so in this lecture, we will be looking at some of the very basic stuff regarding the MATLAB. So this is basically the layout of the MATLAB environment. And here an important thing is the command window. We will refer to it very frequently in our lectures. So let's start. Okay, so you can think of this command window as a very big calculator. So for instance, it can do a lot of calculations, such as 1 + 1 = 2, and 2 + 3 = 5, 2 + 6 = 8, and so on. In addition to that, you can also apply some of the complex functions, such as sine, and you can also obtain other trigonometric functions, such as the cos, sine, theta, and the other ones. Okay, the essential quality of MATLAB is that it can hold values in the variables. So these are kind of containers which are used to hold a certain amount of values. Similarly, we can say a multiplied by 7, so it will multiply it by a value of 7. So that's for those who are coming from the Excel background, they may start to note some differences here. That is the essential difference between MATLAB and the Excel data processing, is that in MATLAB, it actually represents the data at an abstract level, while in Excel, you are trying to manipulate the data, or it represents the data in the form of numbers. So here the focus is more on the data itself, while here we are focusing on the data abstraction part. So if we want to look deeper into the data, it will be stored in the workspace, so you can hit that data and you can see the value which it is containing. So it is basically focusing on data abstraction part. Okay, that's it for this lecture. See you in the next one. Okay, so in this lecture, we build on what we learned in the previous lecture. You may have noticed in the previous lecture that MATLAB essentially work with variables. And the variables by default in MATLAB are stored as matrices. So we can define A = 7. So in this case, it means that A is a 1-by-1 matrix. But similarly, you can define a little bit more complicated matrix. A semicolon will mean that we are working now with the second row of the matrix, and then this is the third row of that matrix. So it means now that A is a matrix of size 3 × 2. Remember here, this is called the workspace. So whatever variables we have, it is going to be appearing here on this workspace. So this gives you a very good idea that whatever data in Excel we have, we can treat them as a kind of a matrix, and we can apply different operations on that. So for instance, if we want to multiply each and every entry of this matrix by 7, so it will do that operation quite quickly with a single go, right? So that gives you a little bit intuition regarding the strengths of MATLAB. So, and that's where it's get its name from as well, Matrix Laboratory, right? So MATLAB, Matrix Laboratory. Similarly, you can perform other manipulations on this matrix. Here in the workspace, you may note that when we double click here, you may have different options. For instance, you may say, show me the minimum of this matrix. So the minimum in this matrix is 1. Similarly, you can add more. That's the maximum. Similarly, you can have a look at the range, median, mode, standard deviation, and other statistics. So it gives you a little bit more intuition regarding the strengths of the MATLAB. Okay, one important thing is whatever we apply here, it is being stored. So whatever our work is, it is not going to be lost. So if you press the up arrow key, you can note all the commands that we have been running since the start of this session. So it keeps a history of that, and it's quite useful if you want to track what were the commands that you have used just recently, and you can have a look at it, and you can create and do other useful operations on that as well. We will see that later on. So for now, we have this matrix. Similarly, you can obtain the transpose of this matrix by using this sign, right? So it will gives you the transpose of that matrix. So initially it was in this form, and now the rows has been changed to columns and the columns into rows, and vice versa. Similarly, you can do a matrix multiplication and the matrix addition as well. So for instance, you can say A plus A. So it will give you the addition operation on that matrix. Similarly, you can say A minus A, and so on. So A multiply A will be used for matrix multiplication. So this gives you some of the intuition regarding the MATLAB and how it relates to the Excel environment. So in Excel you have tables, and in MATLAB you have the corresponding variables, which are stored in the form of matrices. So we will build on this in the next lecture. Hope you are enjoying the course. So what we did so far was quite basic and simple things. So let us do a little bit more complicated thing. So before doing that, I will give you some short hints. So when you write CLC on this main screen, it will delete all the stuff that you have done so far. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be deleted from the history. It is still present in the command history, and you can access it from here, right? Okay. Now let us look at how we can create a matrix with a single row, right? So in order to do that, you just write the values with a space between it or a comma between it. Both of them will work. So now it has created a particular row, and this variable A is now a matrix with 1 cross 7, which means 1 row and 7 columns. Okay, so if you want to append something to this variable, you may say A, and after that we want to append another row to it. So I say 5, 4, and then we will close it. So we make sure that they are of the same size. So now it has 2 rows and 7 columns. It has been updated. Okay. Now let us say that we are interested in doing some particular operation on a particular row. So how we select actually a particular row from this variable? So that's the question. So if, let's say, I want to display only the first row of the variable A, so how I'm going to do that? I will write A, and then I will write something like this, that I need the first row and display every column to that. So the first argument here essentially represents the row argument, and the second argument, it represents the column argument. So when I give it these two arguments to this variable a, it is essentially meaning that show me the first row, and this column means all. So it means that all the columns corresponding to this row, show me please that. Okay, so if let's say I want to do some essential manipulation on that, I want to say that okay, a equals to I want to store the result in another variable b, and the b will contain the first row of a, and I want it to be multiplied by 8. So now the b will contain these values 1 into 8, 5 into 8, 6 into 8, and so on. So this was how we can actually select a particular row and do some meaningful operation on that particular row. Similar is the case with the columns. So we can say we initialize another variable c, and in c I want to select the first column, and I want to multiply it by 8, right? So it if we display a again, so the first column of a was being selected and it was being multiplied by the value of 8. So that's how you do column selection and row selection on a particular variable. Now let's say I want a little bit more complicated example. I want to select the first 4 values of the first row of the variable a, and I want to multiply it by 8. And then I want to store it in variable b. So how I'm going to do that? I will say 1 to 4, comma, all columns. So it means that select the first 4 rows of the variable a, and the first 4 rows. So it means we do not have 4 rows, so we can say for row 1, I want the first 4 columns of a, and I want to multiply it by 8. So it will be stored in the variable b. So it means that the first 4 values, they are being selected, and it has been multiplied by b. Similarly, you can do a column selection, like if you want some columns to be selected, and then you want to perform some operations on that. Similarly, if you want to select the last 4 columns, so you need to say 5 to n. So you can select 3, so let us make it 4. So it means that starting from fourth column till the ending column, select all those columns corresponding to row number 1 and multiply it by 8. So let's see what's the result in this case. Okay, so in this case the result is 72, 64, 56, and 72. So it means the last 4 values of the first row of variable a was being selected, and they were being multiplied by 8. Similarly, you can also select the rows and columns in different ways. Let's say a little bit more advanced example will be that I want to select rows, but I want to keep 1 row, and then I want to skip 1 row, and then I want to select another row after that. So in order to do that example, you would need to say from 1 to end, and we are giving a step size of 2, so it means row 1 will be selected, and then keep away 2 rows. 2 rows will not be selected, and then the 3rd row will be selected, and so on. So it's basically the step size after which you want the selection to be made. Okay, so let's do that and see what's the answer. So here you get 4 answers. So if we display variable a, it means the first value has been selected, and then 1 value was being not selected, right? And then another value was being selected, and then 1 value was being out, and then another value was being selected, then another value was not being selected, and then the final value was being selected. So the step size of 2 means that select every second value starting from the first, and the ending value will be the end value. Similarly, you can do the same on the rows. If you have multiple rows, you can select the rows from here. Similarly, if we want to do the selection backwards, so how I'm going to do that? I will say that the first value of the variable b will be the ending value, and then I will say -2, and then I will say 1. So essentially what it's going to be doing is that it's selecting the values in reverse order, right? So the first value is 9, that was the ending value, and then we subtract 2 from that, so we deselect this one, and then select this one, and then deselect this one, select this one, deselect, and then select. So the step size in this case was negative, which means that we are de-incrementing it and we are selecting in a decreasing order. So similarly, you can select different kind of values, and you can do manipulation based on that. So that was essentially how you select rows and columns in MATLAB using its different variables. Okay, so without any further delay, in this segment we will be looking at how we can actually access the data in the MATLAB that has been provided to us within the Excel sheet. So actually the MATLAB provides you with this import data facility, and when you click it, a browser will appear over here, so you can locate your data file in your computer. So my data file is in this Excel sheet, so it will open that import tool for you. And within this data, I have 4 columns. So here, the first option, there are many options. So the first one here is this one, that is the variable names. So I'm specifying to it that all the variables names are in row 1. Alternatively, if they are within a specific column, so I need to say that over here. Okay, so this row 1 will be treated as the variable names, and then I can select and deselect columns from here, right? So I can, let's say, select 1 and 2, and it will be transferred to the MATLAB environment. And then when I click this one, so it will select these 2, right? And then you may note that 2 variables has been created here, petal length and sepal length. So these 2 are now being transferred from that Excel file. Alternatively, I may be interested in more. So if I'm interested in all of them, so I will click all of them. And before transferring it to the MATLAB environment, there are a couple of more options. Basically, there are a lot of, but since this is basically the introductory course where our emphasis is to analyze the data that is present from the Excel without going into the programming details. So here these 2 options are clear commands and the workspace. So the workspace is now clear. We do not have anything in history, and our command history is also being cleared. So we want to clear the command history, so that's the option for that. Now we do not have any commands. Okay, let's go again to that import tool, and in this case we want to select all of these, and we want to transfer them to our MATLAB environment. So when I click this right click button, so I may notice that we have now 4 variables, and these variables has the same names as those date of those columns, right? And they have essentially the same type, that is, all of them are numeric. So they're being now transferred into our MATLAB environment, and we can manipulate and do some meaningful operations on top of these variables. Right, so see you in the next segment. In this segment, we will essentially look at some of the useful tricks that MATLAB provides you with in order to select some of your data. So, for instance, we may say we want to select some useful data from this variable petal length. So I will define a variable. This is a logical variable, and I can define it like this: that whenever the petal length is greater than 5, only select those data points where the petal length is greater than 5. So remember, if we don't put a semicolon, all the data will appear over this screen, so I do not want to have that, so we put a semicolon at the end of each statement. Okay, so now remember that TF is again a logical variable, and it will contain ones wherever this condition is true, and it will contain false in the every else element where it is false. So if I say petal length equals to petal length TF, so what essentially this means is that whenever this condition is true, only select those data points. So it will be reduced in size, and you may look at it here. Now the petal length is only 42 in size, right? So it is quite useful. Similarly, you can think of other conditions. For instance, we may say petal length greater than or equal to 5. Or we may say less than equal to 5, or we may say not equal to 5, right? So a whole bunch of different kinds of things you may apply. Similarly, you can define more complex kind of conditions. For example, I may say petal length greater than 5, and at the same time I want sepal length to be less than 3, and similarly I want some more conditions. So you can add more conditions to it, and then it will select the data appropriately for you automatically. Similarly, some other options that you may try is the OR operator. So for the OR, we usually use this sign. So this means a logical OR. So if this condition is true or this condition is true, whenever it is true, whenever one of these is true, it will give it a value of 1. So similarly, you may try more complex ones, and you may also define the order in which these are evaluated, and so many other options. In conclusion, the essential idea is that whenever this condition is true, you can use it to select and reduce your data points. So for instance, I can always say sepal length equals to sepal length TF. So it will mean whenever the TF is true, that condition is true, only select those rows from my sepal length variable. So it will also reduce it to 42 in size. So you may notice that it has changed its size to 42. Now both of them have the same length. So this is quite useful. It is called logical. If you want to know more about it, just type it here. The logical variable, type logical, and it will give you the necessary documentation for that. Right? So it's convert that into its corresponding logical variable. So it's quite useful for reducing and selecting the data according to your needs and demands. And it is quite useful pre-processing step before visualizing it. Hope you are enjoying the course.